as it relates to controlled substances. That state and federal laws require physicians to maintain adequate and accurate medical records. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And also, as put out by the Medical Board of California, would you agree with this statement as it relates to controlled substances, that a physician is required to keep drugs in a securely locked and substantially constructed cabinet or safe?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Locked up. And medical records kept, documenting which drugs were dispensed. We don't have a single record of any lorazepam being dispensed other than the shipment records from Tim Lopez from the pharmacy. We have Dr. Paul White. And Dr. White was a very notable person in the field of anesthetics. He did do early research into the clinical use of propofol. Dr. Schaefer has been his colleague and friend for many years. Dr. White is now retired. And what you were presented from Dr. White was junk science. It was disappointing. Dr. Schaefer said it was disappointing. It was garbage science. And it's sad that Dr. White came in here for whatever motive he may have had, whether there are financial considerations that he did not share, we don't know. But the foundation of trust between a patient and doctor, that theme extends to the ability to trust science. He, in April, receives Dr. Steve Schaefer's report. Based on fundamental principles of first-pass effect and what the liver does to propofol when it's orally ingested, Dr. Schaefer concluded that was impossible. Impossible. That's in his report of April 18th. It's impossible. Based on things that first-year medical students know. What your liver does to the oral ingestion of an agent such as propofol, it's impossible that Michael Jackson died as a result of oral ingestion of propofol. So when Dr. White learns of Dr. Schaefer's report, evidently starts backtracking. But how does he do it? Well, according to the direct examination by Mr. Flanagan, he states he wanted to do his own research. And he suggested that we commission a study in animals. And we did this study. We didn't publish it because I didn't think it was necessarily appropriate for publication. It was negative. The drug that was given directly into the stomach was absorbed and metabolized, and there was no effect. Well, in cross-examination, we learn that this wasn't what you would expect from his testimony as some sort of commissioned official study subject to peer review with data to look at. No, he says, Mr. Flanagan stated that he knew a vet in Indiana who could conduct the study. I did not directly participate. Well, did you review any data or were you provided any reports in regard to that study? No formal report. Only an oral report that had no effect, which confirmed what my suspicion was, and it confirmed what Dr. Schaefer had proposed. And who provided you with this oral report? Mr. Flanagan, this is the level of academic research and rigor that Dr. White sullied this trial with. He essentially has Mr. Flanagan call a guy he knows in Indiana, does some study, and then concludes it's not orally bioavailable, which everyone knew. But that's what, during direct examination, you would have believed that he had commissioned a study, he got results, and they chose not to publish it because the results were fairly predictable. He had nothing to do with the study. According to him, it was Mr. Flanagan. It's important and it's relevant as to the level of trust or credence you should give to any of Dr. White's opinions in this case at this point. What else did we learn from Dr. White? We certainly learned that he wouldn't administer propofol in a home.
If Michael Jackson had come to you, Dr. White, and indicated that he would like to hire you to administer propofol to him, to put him to sleep each night in his bedroom, would you do it?
Absolutely not. That would be a job that I would never consider.
Dr. White told us about the need to call 911.
As I said earlier, I think he should have called 911 sooner.
Dr. White told us about the administration of propofol in a bedroom.
Well, I would not administer propofol in a bedroom, as I stated earlier.
Dr. White, after some back and forth questioning, admitted that a pulse oximeter without an alarm when you're not present is utterly useless. I'm asking about a pulse oximeter without an alarm. If you are not there to see it, to see the little tiny screen, and you're not there to hear it, it doesn't even have an alarm, what value does it serve?
Well, only
In your absence, what value does it serve in your absence?
in your absence, it probably has little, if any, value.
None, correct?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay, it has no value, correct? If you're not in the room. Correct?
Correct, yeah.
It has no value. No value. We learned Dr. White's opinion regarding abandonment of a patient, particularly one who's evidently someone who likes to push propofol. The scenario that we have up here, does it reconcile with the urine evidence? Yes. And you remember Dr. White testified repeatedly. His main concern were these urine results. He wanted to get to the bottom of these urine results. On cross-examination, he's asked, I know you indicated Dr. Ornelas is the one who created this, but were you providing her data, information, upon which she would base the simulation? I did not provide her really any guidance whatsoever. She was watching the proceedings on television. That is the science, alleged science, that you're being given by the defense in this case. Junk science.
Mr. Walker, you let us know for purposes of the luncheon recess when it's convenient.
If about 10 more minutes, then I'll be...
I have a feeling we should take the break. Will it be 10?
I think so, Your Honor.
What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Would you like a break, or do you want to go to 10? You sure? You know, I was raised on this issue of always questioning authority, so. You all right?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Cross-examination on this issue. And Dr. White, in the article upon which you based your testimony as far as the 0.3% published in 1988, the author there was Simons, correct? And you felt that was the most accurate accounting of unchanged propofol in the urine? Actually, I didn't make that determination. Dr. Ornelas is the one who did the pharmacokinetic modeling. She is the one with expertise, not me. Did you read this article, Dr. White? I did look over the article. I didn't really analyze it. I looked at the article. I didn't read it in detail. No. How many hours did you put into collaboration with Dr. Ornelas prior to your testifying so you were competently informed as to the data and the literature that you were relying upon? I had a conversation with her. She came over to the house I was staying at, the Flanagan's house, and presented. Mr. Flanagan's house? Yes. His response further on in the transcript, page 9451 and 9452. But again, as I testified, I'm not the expert in the pharmacokinetic modeling. I did not make those graphs. Dr. Ornelas chose the time. I don't know how she decided to put the time of the bolus dose where it was on the graph. The reason I asked her to provide these was because I was interested in knowing about the urine. That is the primary thing. And here we may agree. If there was a vast difference in the urine, amount of the urine content, then it would suggest one model might be more accurate than the other. Dr. White, cross-examination. Dr. White, referring to the 1988 Simons article, it indicates that cyclohexane extractable radioactivity in urine. What is that? I'm not an expert in this area, so I really don't feel comfortable commenting on it. Going on. I really do not feel comfortable commenting on an article that is outside my area of expertise and which I have not been able to carefully analyze it or sit down and analyze with someone who has the expertise to do so. So in a matter of a day, Dr. White came in here and presented himself as an expert in this field and was then running so far away from it, you could hardly keep track of him. He absolutely disowned these simulations. He attributed it all to this Dr. Ornelas that he had a conversation with at Mr. Flanagan's house. And it shows the same standard, the lack of academic rigor, the lack of any research, the lack of seeking the truth that displayed in blaming Michael Jackson propofol the first go-around. And then this issue of oral lorazepam, if you recall, through the questioning by Mr. Flanagan, a number of witnesses were presented with a hypothetical about a supposed 10 a.m. oral ingestion of lorazepam. That was presented numerous times. Why? As the defense elicited, there's a 2-hour peak in lorazepam. So the defense wanted a 10 a.m. ingestion of lorazepam so that at noon, the drugs are at their highest peak. And as Mr. Chernoff said in his opening statement, there would be a perfect storm. And Michael Jackson recklessly grabbed the propofol syringe and injected himself. But as we know, Dr. Schaefer came in and discussed the absorption times as it relates to the stomach. And there would have to be at least 4 hours prior to noon. So what do we get in these new simulations by Dr. White, or rather Dr. Ornelas? A 7 a.m. ingestion. So the lorazepam theory changed. The oral propofol theory changed. The urine theory was based on an old, outdated 1988 article, and we know for a fact from Dr. White's own words, he did nothing to validate, research, or confirm. What he did do is blame it all on this Dr. Ornelas. One area I asked Dr. White about, and it seemed like a pretty simple question, was the tiny nature of the XL infusion kit, that I could ball it up in my hand, could easily fit in a pocket. It was a very small item. It's not unreasonable to think that might have been carried out of the house. It's not unreasonable to think Conrad Murray didn't get everything and wanted to go back and attribute it to retrieving a cream. But I asked Dr. White if this was an easily concealable item. He acknowledged it was, but he didn't feel all that comfortable doing so. Would you agree that this is very compact and would be easily concealable? Would you agree with that statement?
I guess, I don't know what you mean by easily conceivable. I mean,
Well, it could be slipped into a pocket, right?
presumably, yes.
Presumably, yes.
You have another IV line?
Yes.
You have another IV line?
Yes.
You have another IV line?
Yes.
You should have another IV?
With the hollow port.
The XL infusion line fits readily in a pocket. Lastly, you heard from Dr. Steve Schaefer, came in briefly on rebuttal. And you recall he had done the demonstration earlier showing the propofol bottle in the bag. It had drained just fine, controlling the roller clamps as he explained.